relevant to just look at just what the impact of the school system itself has had on my upbringing and how this sounds to me. I was a product of Huntsville when there were only 3 city schools. And when they added, that was Huntsville, Butler, and Lee. And when they added Johnson and Grissom, one being on the south side of town and one being on the north side of town, the impression was that this was a deliberate attempt to re-segregate the schools. That the housing patterns were such that Grissom would be predominantly white and that Johnson would be predominantly black. And if you take the notion that schools are going to be community-centered, it's almost inevitable. But it never seems like that's not intentional. It seems like that's always a deliberate effort. And to look at the housing patterns and to now say that we have 2 schools that are failing schools, meaning Butler and Johnson, it begs the question: what is a failing school, and what's the metric by which we decide that it's failing? Because if I'm going to go to an institution with the expectation that the institution is going to provide something to me, for you to tell me it's failing is saying I'm not doing my job for you, but I'm going to punish you for it by closing your school, as opposed to making my school do what we claim schools are intended to do. So, yes, there's an obvious need there's an obvious desire for anyone to want to maintain the history that was relevant. But when Huntsville made the broad step to integrate, I was a part of the system when both sets of schools still existed. When I went to Lee, Councill was still there. And at some point, the decision was made, we will just eliminate this dual system and we will let everybody go to the school that's reflected by where they live. The decision was made to close the black schools. So we've been through this before, and that's how it feels. That you're gonna do it to us again. And in the process of eliminating our black schools, our principals were demoted to teachers. Our teachers were not allowed to teach white kids, so they had to go to other places, which generally meant if you were a high school teacher, you now had to downgrade to junior high or elementary. Now, they did matriculate back into the other schools over time, but when it initially happened, there was no sense of equality associated with the decision, and there was no sense of that our schools were of any value whatsoever. And I'm a product of one of those schools to say, how could had it not been for my parents electing to, and I suppose that the very fact that they sent my sister to Lee as 11th grader and me there the following year when we were one of maybe 50 students, says that in their own way they were activists, even though they were not the ones out marching up and down the street and getting attacked by dogs or having fire hoses turned on them. They did it in their way. And the value of our experience and the value of our upbringing seems once again to be marginalized and dismissed as not of value. And that's troubling, because if you have been in Huntsville this long, it's like, hey, we've been through this before. When you decide progress is identified as eliminating mine.